I for one, I'm a brave soul who does not like Call of Duty. What would you like to open with? I don't actually know if there's any current events or anything.
I would like to open with, I was watching the old Nintendo E3 presentation from 2005.
What's significant about 2005?
2005 is when they revealed the Wii.
Okay.
And that, I don't know, I wanted to remember a different time.
I thought you were going to hit me with like the 2001 Dark Zelda opening.
No. It was definitely it was also the Twilight Princess reveal though. That was like the big trailer they saved for the end.
Is that the one where Miyamoto comes out with a sword?
No, that was 2004.
Okay.
The year before. So this game didn't come out after 2 years since it was announced. And I remember that. I remember people waiting for this game.
Did you get it on GameCube or Wii?
It was actually my first Wii game.
Oh, same.
And I got it before I got a Wii. Sad story. I traded in my GameCube just to pay for a single copy of Twilight Princess on the Wii.
No, my parents were very, very good parents, and they like fought to try and get me a Wii, but they couldn't get it in time for Christmas, so we had to wait until Best Buy got a restock, and we gave a Starbucks gift card to the guy that helped us get one.
The thing is, I remember that I didn't get, so I got Twilight Princess like on November, I think it came out, and then I had to wait until after Christmas to get a Wii. And I remember my dad, I asked him in advance for our Christmas money in case I found the Wii like in the wild, and I did. I randomly entered a Toys R Us just because I was driving around that day. Randomly entered, and I just see like just beside me, I look and there's just a stack of these things, and I go, oh my god, it's here. Like this was just complete chance, because they were sold out in Puerto Rico too. You couldn't find one for a while. And I remember thinking, my brothers will have to forgive me because I'm going to use their Christmas money too.
I mean, they get a Wii out of it. That's not the
yeah, I
deal.
think, and when I explained it to them, and I was like, I got a Wii. Here it is. Isn't it awesome? Isn't it great? Look, let's play Wii Sports. Oh, by the way, I use your Christmas money too. And they probably they thought it was fun.
Imagine just like, we'd like to play.
Nah, they dug it too. Yeah, I don't know. Something about seeing Iwata again did it for me. I was like, oh, I remember this. This is nice. But then like awkward 2006 game industry humor spread around in it too. It's in many ways it just frames that time, that era of gaming.
Did a question is like, did you see the ads in like Puerto Rico or?
No, we used to. Well, sure, at like GameStops and stuff, but
okay, no, I'm just genuinely curious if they localized it to like, you know, vosotros, you know, jugar.
No, that's Castellano. That's like Spain Spanish. Vosotros. No, most of the advertising in Puerto Rico is in English, just because a lot of companies are just overseas companies, like places that sell video games. Actually, that was back then. Now, GameStop doesn't sell in Puerto Rico anymore. I think Best Buy and Walmart are like the only places to get games, unless you go to like a secondhand store or a mom and pop shop. So, but no, back then the advertisement was the same, but we got most of our information from the internet anyway.
Fair enough.
I remember at that time we like I was using it a lot more, the internet. I mean, just to keep up with that stuff. And I remember my friend Juan, he was like super into Nintendo, and he was the one I got all my updates from. and I remember he brought the Zelda trailer on like a thumb drive to college
goodness.
to show us the Twilight Princess trailer. And yeah, he's the one I always think about when I think, man, that game took 2 years to come out. He kept waiting. He had to read every announcement or delay announcement and then tell me the next day. And I'm like, oh, that sucks, buddy. Like, I'm okay.
Yeah, I was able to get the Wii with like maybe 3 or 4 days left of Christmas vacation from school. So,
cool.
I mean, like, I got it and I'm like, all right, we're in this. Like, let's go. I do not have time
Just the last
to
3
enjoy
days.
this game. I swear it almost, like, it felt like it took the entire rest of the break just to get through that tutorial, but...
Yeah.
I love that game, but man, that tutorial is just rough. It's so long.
Are we talking about Zelda?
Twilight Princess tutorial.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, I do remember. It's like the whole town is a tutorial, and then you got to get the
Yeah.
horse, and then you got to
And
get
then
the
you
wooden
have
sword,
to get the wolf, and
the
you have
wolf,
to do like
yeah.
the bugs, and it's cool. It's got a mood, but like, yeah, it took way too long.
Twilight Princess is 100% vibes. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yeah, no, it's like edgy in a really cool way, and not that like
the most vibes game.
yeah,
in Zelda
it's just
history.
dark. But
More
like,
than
it's dark,
Majora's Mask.
Yeah, it's dark and it's like going for dark. I don't know. Majora's Mask works because it's like kind of dark, but it doesn't always feel like it's intending to be dark. But Twilight Princess is definitely like the spookiest on purpose, and I love it for that.
I think Twilight Princess really wanted to elevate the Ocarina of Time aesthetic after what happened with Wind Waker.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people back then, I don't know if people know this, but back then no one liked Wind Waker. Everyone thought it was dumb and kiddie and stupid.
No, I saw the GameFAQs forums and people kept calling it Zelda. And
I remember
were
that too.
insufferable
Yeah,
about
with
it.
a C.
Mhm.
That, oh my goodness, you brought me back. I remember playing it and loving it. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. When I first played it, I didn't like it because it was too short, but not because of the way it looked. I actually thought it looked cool. The problem was that I didn't do any of the side quests. I didn't do any of the sea charts or maps or anything. And you can beat that game super quick if you just skip all of that. I don't know if you knew this.
See, I didn't have a GameCube, so I wanted to play it. But
yeah, it's it was worth it. I remember playing it a second time because I was like, I really like this game, but I didn't like it the last. Like, I like how it looks. I like everything about it except playing it. Let me try it again, give it another chance, because I feel like I missed something. And I'm glad I did, because that second time was like it. I remember this is like, it clicked. This is awesome. I love this. I wanna just like sail around everywhere. It's so cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember like how I felt on Twilight Princess when it came out, because I definitely had no problem with the motion controls. I thought they were cool. I thought they worked for the most part. Like aiming with the bow was fun.
Yeah. It's better.
And
it's better than like control.
Oh yeah. 100%. And I didn't mind like waggling to swing the sword. I thought it was fine. like especially when you're on the boss and it's doing that like little musical refrain, the like
yeah, I remember.
Like just jamming the Wiimote furiously. Like it felt pretty good.
I think hold up. There you go. We're going like this.
Jorge's waving a Wiimote right now.
Yeah, for
not safely.
only.
You don't have the wrist wrap around.
Oh no, I don't have the wrist wrap. Yes, for people who are listening only.
You could have killed someone.
I could have damaged everything. My office is kind of like a China shop right now. But yeah. So, isn't that a great way to start our topic?
Yes, welcome to Brain Lords, Video Games of the Mind, a panel discussion between artists and the art they love. I'm your co-host, Kyle.
And I'm Jorge.
And yes, today we are discussing... What is the most adequately rated video game? But first, the context. Jorge, why are we discussing this topic today?
So here's a little bit of a story. I was selling prints at MomoCon recently, and most of my art now is just fan art of video games. So I get a lot of people's reaction to like the stuff I'm into, which is like retro, vintage game stuff. And it's interesting to see the younger folks react to this stuff. Like, I'm genuinely surprised, like in a positive way, to see how many people recognize these old IPs. But there was a comment that stuck with me that day. I want to say this kid was like 20, like early 20s. He looked at my Mario RPG print and said these words that stayed with me. He said, "Wow, Mario RPG, that game is so underrated." And he just walked away. And I just stood there and went, huh?
For context, this was like maybe, 3 weeks after the...
This was... Yes. Okay, so yeah. Thank you for that. This was not that much... yes, just 3 weeks, because it came out in May, right? The Super Mario RPG remake.
Something like that. It was not that long ago.
I remember it came out around May, because I remember I flew to my dad's house and brought the game with me, because I had just got it. So yeah, it was around May. And yes, that game had just come out. It had gotten a remake. It was relevant again, you know? And to hear someone say, that game is so underrated, I'm like, what are you talking about? So, and then that stuck with me. And then I kind of went to my artist friends and was like, okay, so this kid just looked at my friend and called Super Mario RPG underrated. And everyone started giving me like fire emotes and like agreeing with him. And I was like, hold up, no, he's wrong. This game is like one of the most aptly rated games ever made. Like when it came out, it received critical praise and people loved it. Like it's one of the Super Nintendo's best sellers. And on the Switch, I'm pretty sure it did really well too. I don't have the exact numbers, but I can bet you it was a lot. And that just stuck with me. I'm like, what is like an appropriately rated game? Yeah,
and to give him the benefit of the doubt, like he probably just meant to say that game is a gem, but this is not the podcast for discussing linguistics. This is for like needlessly thinking on philosophical and educational topics.
Yeah, fair warning. This will get a little bit in the semantics of things. Switch Mario RPG sales. I'm actually going to look it up right now because I am curious myself. This Mario RPG remake has sold 3 million copies as of December 2023. So,
which how does that compare to like other good hits of theirs? I mean, 3 million is nothing to sneeze at.
Do you want me to maybe Mario Wonder as an example?
Sure. Yeah. Because that's like I would say that's like a main game for them.
Mario Wonder was 10 million.
Okay.
But this was no, okay, yeah, this was also December. So yeah. So compared to it doesn't really reach Mario Wonder numbers, but
no, but
3
like
million
that's
is
not
3 million.
Yeah, and also that's not a game they have to make from the ground up.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
It's still, it's a massive undertaking. I don't want to sell that short, but like, yeah, this is maybe a bit easier of a pitch, let's say.
So I was just kind of left flabbergasted. Like, I live in a time where, like, I think you're right to give this individual the benefit of the doubt. I think what they meant is that it's a gem of a game, and not a lot of people talk about it anymore. It is old. Even when the remake came out, not a lot of people talk about it. But I don't think underrated was the correct term. It doesn't apply.
No, I mean, like, outside of like Sora and Goku, its legacy is the most demanded Smash Brothers character.
Oh, are you talking about Geno?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
I was so glad,
Geno?
by the way. Yeah. I mean, the secret answer is no, because if Geno never gets made as a character, that means that Nintendo can never... I say never. Nintendo is less likely to C&D me for the Geno statue. They don't make an amiibo. I'm on top, baby.
So you have a very personal reason why you don't want Geno.
But no, I mean, I have been Team Geno since like before the dojo.
Before it was cool. Wow, before dojo? So before Brawl?
Dojo. I wanted it for Melee, yeah.
That's awesome. So like, oh wow, you brought up dojo. That was the golden age of Smash.
Yeah, back when the internet was like fun and usable.
I know, when it was cool.
Remember when you could be excited to go on a website and see like a small update from like a personal space?
Twitter ruining everything. Yeah. Oh my god. I remember like waking up at 5 a.m. every morning just to catch the update when it happened. That was that was a time.
Yeah, no, I mean, kind of on a similar regard, like I have a distinct memory, speaking of like adequately rated games, where I was
Yeah,
at a
those-
con. I was at a con maybe like 10 or 15 years ago. It was a while back. And I'm cosplaying as Gray Fox. I'm sitting down taking a break, and a gentleman.
Wait, you cosplayed as Gray Fox?
Yeah, I'll have to
No
show you. It
kidding.
was a while ago.
You're gonna have to show me that, yeah.
But I was cosplaying as Gray Fox, and a nerdy guy in. I don't think he was wearing a trench coat, but that's what it feels like in my mind's eye. But he walks by me and he looks at my costume. He's like, "Man, Gray Fox, that's so awesome." I'm like, "Thanks, dude." And he's like, "Yeah, it's so cool that you're cosplaying like someone that like nobody like knows. You know, that's really awesome that like your character like." And he just like kept talking in that like awkward con way where you're like, "Hey, my guy, you can just." Oh, we're still in this convo, aren't we?
Yeah, you're giving the signs. A friend of mine used to call it. You're doing the AOL man pose, where you're like trying to leave, and that person just doesn't pick up on the social cue. Like, this conversation is over. I'd like to.
Yeah, and he was doing the thing where he wasn't really picking up that like I had understood what he was saying, but he kind of kept repeating the same line in different ways over and over again, just kind of reiterating the fact that it's like, nah, no one knows that character. I mean, it's so cool. And I remember like kind of sort of walking away and being like, he's in Smash Brothers.
I know.
Like, I know he's not Snake, but like he's like one of the main bosses of that game.
He's one of the most iconic characters in Metal Gear Solid. To give the benefit of the doubt to this person, and maybe they just don't have enough people that can.
I know what he
they
was
wanna talk
trying
about
to
that.
say.
Yeah.
But he still had to look me in the eyes as I was cosplaying the thing he was referring to and say nobody knows that character.
Yes, and see, this is what we want to talk about today. Like, what there seems to be like a social, or I guess societal understanding of what these terms are, and we kind of wanted to define that for ourselves.
Yeah, so to bring us to our first talking point, what does it mean to be overly, underly, and adequately rated? I think we need to define our terms here, because this is a 100% vibes-based argument, based entirely around our biases and personal opinions, and just how we perceive the culture based off of like what we've played and who we interact with. So like, this is going to be like based on us, but also I think like what's important is like we need to be gauging this on what is actually interesting to discuss about what's underrated or overrated.
Yeah, like you said, the thing we want to establish right away is that we're kind of figuring this out for ourselves. We're not trying to like establish a definitive idea of what these things are. However, I do feel like that we're going to consider what people think about when they think about these things.
Yeah, no, I feel like we're tied into the culture somewhat. I mean, like we have to make art to be purchased by people, and we do what we like, but like we have to have an assumption of what's going to sell. So like I'd like to assume that we have some idea of like what people are into.
Yeah, I do want to be careful not to super subjectify my arguments, because then I'll just defang myself. But I think I know what you're saying. And I agree, we should just try to keep this a vibe.
Yeah, I mean,
Only...
ultimately, at the end of the day, we just need to like, if we can argue the point, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I want. Even though I have subjective ideas of what these things mean, I can back them up with my arguments. Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to do here.
So I did some independent research. Are you familiar with Plato's theory of the ideal form?
Oh my god. No,
it's just I heard something similar, and then I looked into it, and I thought, oh, this is actually kind of like what I want to talk about. But in short, the idea is that when you're doing a stone sculpture, you might be an apprentice, and the master that you're working under would sculpt something out of wood. That's a form that you're using to refer to. That's like the original or the ideal, and what you're working with is real life, and or an iterated version of that. So if I were to draw like a square, it doesn't have to be a perfect square with like, completely uniform sides exactly at 90 degrees. If I drew something pretty close and asked you to tell me what that was, you'd be able to say, like, that's a square. Like, we know kind of what we're talking about because we have sort of this ideal form in our heads based off of what we've been taught and sort of how culture dictates these things. So this is all like a long-winded way of saying, like, I think there's sort of like a very general understanding that I think everyone has of like what it means to be over or underrated. Like there's a bit of a paradox though when you think about it on what is over or underrated, because if something is like adequately rated, I would assume it means that like a large group of those sort of involved have the same opinion or understanding on how this art is affecting them or how it was perceived by like the most amount of people.
Yep.
If something is overrated, that means that like the game is not as good as people view it. And then the inverse for underrated. But there's a bit of a paradox there, because
yes,
the more people say a game is underrated, the more aptly rated the game is.
I do have in my definitions, I do address these things, so I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went on my tirade, but like, what do you view as like what makes a game over, under, or aptly rated?
I guess I'll start with what is aptly rated, in my opinion. I think this is a game, and we're strictly speaking of games. This can apply to a lot of media, films, TV, movies, music, that kind of stuff. But I think we're strictly here talking about games. So just
this is a games as art podcast, but like,
right,
it applies to art.
Correct. And that being said, an aptly rated game is a game that is unanimously considered excellent in many or all aspects of gameplay, narrative, and art by the gaming community. So it's one of those things where there's no question. Now, this does kind of enter the field of like some people might enter like a contrarianist stance and just try to argue these things just to spite like the how these things largely occupy the conversation around games, which is where I understand is where contrarianism comes from, is the feeling of being like left out. So you try to push back against those things, which is something I've felt myself. I understand that feeling. But in this case, when you are, I think the tell that a game is like aptly rated or adequately or appropriately rated is that when you engage in critique or like argument against this these merits of the game, you need to be careful not to nitpick and not to enter highly subjective opinion. And you need to consider the contextual environment, or the you need to consider the context of the environment these things were created in. This art or game was created in order to properly argue your points. And this is, to me, like where the difference comes in. Like once a person has to enter a more nuanced discussion and avoid nitpicking and avoid the subjectivity, the contrarianism, that's when I feel like, okay, this does have like a self-evident merit to its craft.
This is sort of half a talking point, but would you say that like as time goes on, games are sort of more aptly rated? Because I feel like games need to maybe be out for a little while before people sort of get.
Yes, but I'll get to that. Actually, I wrote that something about that down. To finish up the appropriately rated definition for me, the last point I want to make is that this is usually what happens is one disadvantage of this category is that these games do tend to take up too much space in the conversation. Like sometimes even I get frustrated with, and this is actually kind of how I determine what aptly rated games are. sometimes I get frustrated with discussions around games that like we already talk about all the time, and there's just little there to examine at this point. So I get frustrated because there's like not really a lot there to extract that'll allow us to grow further or move forward in this culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like, ultimately it's about, like, literary criticism. And, yeah, that's interesting, because, like, I feel like you could say a game is like, adequately rated once we've kind of said everything that needs to be said about that, but they never really... that point will never come, ultimately. It maybe will slow down, but, you know, I don't know if there's a lot of new things to be said about Doom, but also, no, that's entirely wrong. Like, you can say new things about Doom all the time. It's just that most people will get that Doom is a classic when you bring it up.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up Doom. And it does... that's the thing. It's like, how many times are we going to talk about this? Even if there is... There will always be, like, depth to these things, which is another thing that marks... like that, or gives these games that everlasting power, the evergreen, as some would say. There comes a point where it's like, okay, we're talking in circles, praising the same things, and it's like, okay, great, new things have come out. Like, let's look at those things too. You know, like we can't let the titans, as one would say, I guess, occupy the discussion, and then not give enough space for other things that I think deserve to be talked about, which I'll get into later.
Yeah, I guess, and new things coming out will, like, always give you a chance to sort of have a new lens to looking at, like, previous works.
Yeah, and that is what I consider an aptly rated game.
Yeah.
Well, here's a talking point. Or you wanna? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, here's a talking point. How does critical reappraisal change what is good or bad in a game?
When you say critical reappraisal, you mean like when people examine something that had come out before it, but didn't really get the analysis that it needed to have, or like the kind of appreciation that it should have had?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, I think we're in a golden age right now for YouTube essays to right, like, I'm telling on myself on what I do in my spare time, but like, look, I watch a lot of YouTube essays, and boy howdy, are a lot of people just able to get my attention by, like, making an hour-long video about the Sega Saturn game Baroque and how it was, like, underappreciated for its time.
Baroque, yeah. Huh? Didn't that come out on the Wii?
It did in 2009, I think. But
yeah, I'm thinking of the same one. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a Saturn game.
But I've seen more than one video on, like, y'all see Baroque? It's a pretty cool game. But like to name another game, like, I feel like Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest has I would say in the last, like, year or two really seriously been reconsidered as not that bad of a game. And I feel like if you were on the internet in the mid to late 2000s, the common understanding of Simon's Quest was it was like the black sheep, and it is clunky at times, but like, if you actually look at how much grinding you have to do in that game if you want to afford a whip, it's like you get enough hearts to get, like, the first upgrade if you want to get it. Like, you get a better whip pretty soon after in like 3 to 5 minutes or something. It's not a long amount of time. So I feel like there are a lot of things in that game that are just maybe, like, that were overstated in 2006, 2008, kind of around then, you know, through various vitriolic YouTube videos and Flash cartoons, let's say.
We all know which video you're talking about.
If you know, you know. But like, looking back on that game, it's like...
There's things I agree with that video, though. Like, there's things that I do feel like are even...
Oh, what a horrible night for a curse is a curse. Every time that text box comes out,
right?
Like, it takes so long.
You can't play the game. The game doesn't want to let you play it. It's, you know, it's stuff like that where I feel like, yeah, okay, I'm glad you bring this up because we are going to talk about it. There are things, you know what, this will make me go, you know what, I'll just bring up another term of mine here, because my definition of an underrated game is kind of what you were talking about right here. So I think an underrated game is one that was critically panned and considered a financial failure, but is beloved by players. And there's the point that I want to make here is that over time, you do have like that. Oh no, my bad. This is not. No, my notes are. These are not my notes. Let me back up a little bit.
Yeah, we can edit this
because I think there is like instead of underrated, I have a secret category that I consider important too, called underappreciated, and this is actually more in line with what you were talking about. And these are games that in rare cases, like, you know, they don't have that, like, they need time. They need time for people to realize, like, and appreciate qualities of these games that, like, actually make them just as or just as worthy of praise as bigger titles.
Yeah, no, I think critical reappraisal is important because it lets us look at games as the genres and means of play evolve. Because, like, if you look at Castlevania 2, like, it's a Metroidvania game, like, before Symphony Night and Super Metroid. Like, it's way more open than most games of that era. Like, we're talking like that, Goonies 2, like, it does a lot of really cool things. It's very ahead of its time. It's just clunky about it. And so I think that, like, there are, like, a lot of games that are doing something that are evolving the genre that people aren't familiar with or, like, used to, can cause, like, umbrage and feel stiffer or worse because it's not really being played as maybe intended, or it's just not able to fulfill the promises that it's setting out for. I mean, like, I forget which Aliens game it was, but famously, like, the first Aliens first-person shooter that did the standard console first-person controls, people, like, there's plenty of reviews you can consult that say the controls are bad. And it's just the, like, use right stick to move, use left stick to move, use right stick to aim.
Is this that survival horror one? Which name I can't remember. Alien. My brain wants to say Colonial Marines, but no, that is not true. Isolation? Wasn't it?
I think so.
This was in
No, not Isolation.
No, this was 2014.
No, I'm talking about, like, I think it was like a N64 era one.
Really? Hold up.
I'm pretty sure it's Alien Resurrection. But regardless, like, it doesn't.
There is a PlayStation 1 game called
Yeah,
Alien
regardless, I don't think it changes the argument too much. But there was an early Aliens game where, like, it had the most, like, play Halo in your mind, and that's how the game more or less controlled. But when reviews of it came out, like, people did not like the controls, or at least many reviewers at the time said it felt stiff.
Ah, okay, yeah.
But, like, you play that game now and it's fine. Like, it's not the most fluid FPS, especially compared to, like, others in its genre. But, like, it doesn't control bad.
I take it back then. This does fall under underrated terms that I wrote down here, because sometimes games that come out are not hits with critics or reviewers, but as time goes on, like you said, the reappraisal of games, as time goes on, if there is if there are people that are still willing to examine these things over time, do like the deeper qualities, like, rise to the surface. The cream of the crop, as a famous man once said.
Yeah, and that's why it's, like, it's tricky for me, because, like, I feel like to say something's underrated, it's taking a look at it at a very specific time, because, yeah, over time we can have critical reappraisal that makes it so that people understand, like, no, this game actually was doing some cool stuff, and there's a bit more of an understanding, or there's fewer people that are likely to just sort of judge that game without having played it, saying, like, oh yeah, wasn't that the bad, the Aliens game with the bad controls.
Yeah, and no, you're right. The thing that I also want to bring up is that it's very important in my opinion, it's very important that an underrated game was critically panned. That's, like, to me, the defining factor is that when it came out, people like, they thought it was shit or it was not that great. But as time went on and more people played it, like it had the time it needed to grow and people to understand like the more intricate aspects and qualities of it, then people go, oh, there's good things in here. They're a little obfuscated by other qualities.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up games media with this, because I almost feel like I have the opposite definition, where I feel like there's a lot of underrated games where critically they're beloved, but they just did not sell commercially. Fans just did not care. Think about like the original Nier. There were a couple of reviews that were very negative on that game, but there were people like day one that said it was like an amazing, incredible game, and it took a long time for that to really get picked up on. It wasn't until the until Nier Automata and the re-release of 1 that people started looking at it as or expressing more vitriolically that game was really something.
See, that is where underappreciated comes in, because in this case, I feel you brought up a good game, Nier Replicant, the original. Underappreciated is more a game that actually no, you're right. Replicant was more underrated. Yeah, that falls more into that category. Well, I even get my own terms wrong. So but you're right, yes. But however, I do feel that it's important to in my opinion, the initial boom that the game has is important, and in some cases, when a game comes out and people shit on it, that's kind of like what sets the I guess the field for
that's the context in which the game comes out is kind of like that sets everything in motion and kind of the story of this game's reception. So here's a talking point then, something you brought up. Many games are aptly rated but underappreciated. What differentiates that from being underrated, and what do games in this category have in common?
Ooh. Repeat the first part.
So many games are aptly rated but underappreciated.
Yeah.
So
yeah, those fall underappreciated in my opinion, where like they do. Oh, and to answer the second part of the question, which is like what sets these apart from like the appropriately rated games. I think what happens with these is that even though they get critical praise, and even though people who do play it are wowed and like blown away by these games, the issue comes in like the initial boom not being big enough, that maybe perhaps because there's not enough marketing for the game, it just fails to generate the hype, or perhaps like it's just not the kind of 13 Sentinels is a good example. Like these, like the game looks like it's going to be something until you play it. Like you have to play it to know what it's like.
That's fair. Like a lot of games come out and they're maybe marketed as something they're not. And
yes,
people might go in with certain expectations, but when you view the game under its own terms, it's like significantly better.
Or they don't even give it a shot. I think this is what actually happens, is that people just largely ignore, like this doesn't fall into, well, number one, this doesn't line up with my interest. Number two, no one else is playing this, so I don't want to play it because I don't have anyone to talk about it with. This is a very important part of the whole like games that are good but no one plays them. There's a big social aspect to it. If not a lot of people play it, then there's no incentive. Gaming is a social experience for some people. I would say a lot of people.
I mean, like any piece of art, like we're social creatures, and like no matter how insular art is sort of consumed or taken under, like experiencing it with other people or comparing that experience is extremely human, and I think part of art.
Mm-hmm.
No single player game is actually single player.
Yeah, that's
in the sense that it's something that you can compare to other people.
I have a question for you personally. Does the social aspect affect whether or not you play a game? Like, do you play a game because a lot of people are doing it, or do you actually play things because you want to?
Oh, I mean, certainly, like, games have come out where I've been more or less inclined to play them because people are talking about them. Like, I've definitely been FOMO'd to playing certain games. I got FOMO'd into playing Diablo 4 But
we talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah, or like a Borderlands 2. I played a little bit, but like I felt like the people I was playing it with were kind of rushing through it, and I couldn't enjoy it. So I never like finished it. I just got through a good portion of it.
Okay.
But I was playing that to play it socially. I'm trying to think of the opposite effect where I didn't want to play something because everyone was talking about it. I mean, there's playing like any sort of big budget game, you know. I feel like is if I don't play it, it's easy to say like, well, you know, it's like I kind of got enough of what the game was about and decided it just wasn't for me, and you know, I had to choose how to spend my time. You know, I'm sure if I sat down with something like God of War, I'd probably have a pretty good time, but like, you know, I have an idea of what that game is going to be like, and I'd rather spend my time on the things that I'm maybe less certain of, or maybe I'm vibing with a little bit stronger.
Yeah, understood. I have another question, which actually might lead us to our next topic. Uh-oh, I forgot my question. Oh no, Kyle, help me. Actually, never mind. We'll just talk about what I think is the last category, which you briefly brought up, the overrated games. And this is one that is probably the most subjective, because when you call a thing overrated, you do apply a lot of yourself into that opinion. Sometimes you might have a good argument. Sometimes you have like a very strong reason why you believe that something does not match, or a game does not match the conversation around it. Like the hype around it just doesn't. It's not consistent with the experience that you are having. So, that being said, I believe that an overrated game is one that receives high critical praise, perhaps even high praise from players, but either as time goes on or upon like closer examination, fails to meet the standards set by the conversation surrounding it.
Yeah. So this is again, I think, where the biggest instance of like this paradox I keep bringing up comes up, because I was trying to think like, what games do I want to talk about in this category? I had a lot harder of a time coming up with overrated games.
Oh, okay.
Because I just, you know, I typed out most overrated games just to see like what came up, and it's kind of what you'd expect. It's like your Call of Duties. It's a lot of live service games, Minecrafts or Roblox or Uncharted's. Or Last of Us came up a lot. And what's interesting about that is I feel like, well, then if enough people are saying, you know, like I said before, if enough people are saying like, well, COD's got some issues. If sure, it feels good to play maybe, but like, I for one, I'm a brave soul who does not like Call of Duty. You know, that's not a very controversial statement. Like, and I think plenty of people feel that way. So even though like a massive amount of people play Call of Duty, you know, a console-defining number of people play this game, you know, it's not. I don't know if it's overrated, or at least it's not interesting to say it's overrated. Let's say that, because
you're not exactly saying anything.
Yeah,
you're not exactly saying anything by saying it's overrated. You kind of have to back that up with a stronger. I was gonna say thesis, but let's not go that crazy.
Yeah. But there has to be some more novelty to it than that.
I guess if that's what you're saying, I honestly don't even think of those games when I think of overrated stuff, because those are games made for a demographic and they play it, and that's fine. That's good enough. It's more when like, in my opinion, it's more when like I can't have a conversation about anything else because there's just this one thing that is like constantly at the forefront or at the or circulating in the zeitgeist at the time. And then when I finally get to experience it, I'm like, where is all the things you were talking about? I don't see any of that here. Like, I'm not. What game are you playing? Because I don't feel like I'm playing the same game. I feel like that to me is more of the more important factor rather than like whether or not something is popular.
Yeah. So I think very recently, like critically BioShock Infinite has been reappraised. I think there were a number of people who were critical of that game as it came out.
I remember, people didn't like it.
But I think as time has gone on, people have like been much more negative towards that game. You know, I think as that game came out, largely people were fairly positive. You know, it's got a lot of like, it's well produced. It's got a lot of voice acting. It's got a lot of like well animated cutscenes. It's got a lot of atmosphere. It sets itself up as a highly narrative game that was extremely hyped. But, you know, I think over time people very much despise that game, myself included, because of its politics, because of like how obvious it is that the game was piecemealed from a lot of parts that were promised and never delivered on. Yeah, there's a lot of like elements of that game where you'll fight a ghost and you're like, when did this game set up ghosts as even a possibility? Because it feels like it was from an element of the game that just was not supposed to exist, but they had to ship something.
Did you? That's a good point. Yeah. So you're saying that if something fails to meet expectations, that does kind of fall under the overrated category.
Yeah, but I would say
for
like
something like BioShock. Would you say that for that? Like for
the original
Infinite?
BioShock?
No. Sorry, for Infinite.
Well, see, I don't know if BioShock Infinite is overrated anymore, at least not in an interesting way, because I think that if you are at all into games criticism, I feel like you kind of already know that people have a few things to say about that game. So, like, I don't know if that counts as overrated, at least anymore in, 2024. Maybe in, like, 2012 or 2015 or something like that. Like, let's say like America 2016 saying BioShock Infinite is overrated based on like the culture of the time and how politics are shifting, I think is an interesting thing to say. But like now I don't think it's overrated. I think we all kind of have an idea, like enough people sort of in balance think that it's good versus think that it's maybe not so good.
Okay, well, I think to wrap up the definitions on my end, the last thing I want to point out about an overrated game, what defines it for me, is I think the most common trait that I find personally is when there's a hyperfixation on like specific qualities of a game rather than the sum of its parts, like the whole thing, and then that kind of becomes the thing everyone praises. You know what I mean? Like, I have examples, but I'm not going to mention them yet. There are games I play where I'm like, okay, I understand that people like this part of the game, but if I take all of these things and put them into what they are right in front of me, which is the complete finished product, it just does not. It doesn't do it. I don't care. I don't get it. I don't like it. And there's also that honeymoon period, something I learned from the FGC, which I find very useful term for describing overrated games, is when they come out and people are just like enamored with, because like the pre-hype was so good, game comes out, people are enamored with it, and there's just like no room to criticize. Like we're only allowed to talk about good things about this shit. And that to me is also frustrating. I
mean, it is frustrating, but at the same time, like, you kind of know when a game is at Evo because it's new versus, like, because it's an all-timer.
Now, I'm saying, like, the FGC taught me this term, and I do believe, like, it's specifically because, like, a new fighting game comes out, everyone loves it for 2 weeks, and then suddenly you start seeing the flaws, and you're like, oh, okay, so this is a problem. This, all the nice things are no longer present anymore. I'm only noticing the bad things, and I kind of feel like that applies to other games too. There are other games that, everyone's in love with them. For like 2 weeks, I wrote 2 games down actually that fit this description, and then when like 2 or 3 weeks pass, we've moved on. We don't even want to talk about it anymore. It's bizarre to me.
Yeah, actually, I think bringing up competitive games is a really interesting angle for this, because, like, would you say that when a game maybe gets solved, or when like a key strategy comes out, like, does it, like, does that affect like how it's perceived in the culture? Like, does the game stop being good once it's figured out? If we all know what the best character is, you know.
I think once again, by figured out, do you mean like optimized? Like people have played the game so much that it just has nothing left to like workshop with in terms of gameplay or strategy or tech.
Because I think
like some clarification.
You know, like Melee for instance. Like I think the reason it has staying power over the other Smash Brothers even is that like you keep getting these narratives of like I can recall like a time like several months ago where I was like, yo, did you hear someone placed in a tournament with Donkey Kong? Like that game is not like people are constantly evolving on this game, so it's like it's reshaping sort of how the game can be played.
Yeah I think that I guess to tie this into your initial question, I don't think there is such a thing. This is kind of a non-answer and I apologize, but I don't think there is such a thing as like completing a game in that sense. What happens is, number one, people play a game for so long. This is in the case of like Melee. People play a game for so long that there's just like they can unearth literally all like everything, and there's just more. You know what I mean? Which is, to me, the beauty of Melee is that people played it for so long that everyone eventually figured out how to like fight the top tiers with characters that, like you said, like you would never expect like someone to make a top 8 to, because the time was given to that environment for examining these things. This also happens with speedrunning. Everybody thinks like, oh my god, Mario 64, there's no way we can break this record, and then somebody does it, and it just keeps happening, like, because there's so many people playing the same game. There's a community, and they're like archaeologists. They're like excavating new things, new discoveries every time, because there's so many active hands just digging and finding things that just a few people would have taken like way too long to do, to the point where they just give up. So I feel like that's really what's happening.
Yeah, so maybe like to pull this back to our main topic, like would you say that there can be like ebbs and flows of a game sort of rating the culture?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I know plenty of stories of speedrunning where like the game just stagnates for a while and then something breaks and the game is hyped up again.
Yeah, that's what I was that's the thing. And that does kind of, I think the important thing is to have a narrative behind it. Like, it's not enough to say, oh, somebody broke the Mario 64 world record. You got to go the summoning salt route, where it's like, let me explain to you why this is crazy. And then when you do that, people become invested, and then they want to be a part of that. You know, they want to be part of that narrative. And then that gives the game a new lease on life.
Sorry, this is a tangent, but I love nothing more than watching a summoning salt video and be deep in the weeds, where he's like, and then Blorbo discovered the flip skip by jumping up and it's just like, oh, like
No, my favorite is when he names these speedrunners and they just have like Dicky Wiki, and they just have like the stupidest names, but he's doing it in this like documentary.
It's so serious in a way that is like 100% genuine. I love that about it.
I'm the cool kid who used to watch Summon and Salt before he was cool.
Wow.
I'm always gonna brag about that.
I can't brag about that, but I can brag about that. I can point to an email where I said to someone, hey, you should use the song Home, or Resonance by Home. It's really good. I think you should put it in your trailer. I really like it. They're small artists. I bet you could get it.
Nice.
I was right.
Is that the one he plays like right at the intro at the end?
Yeah, it's the one. You know the one.
Yeah, I know the one. But yeah, I remember when he used to upload Punch-Out speedruns. He used to be a speedrunner too.
Let's
cool.
go back to our topic a little bit. We've talked about sort of this perception of like a lot of people like or dislike a game. So the next talking point I'd like to bring up is what makes a game divisive, and does that context better frame the game?
What makes a game divisive? Why don't you start with this one, because I'm having trouble thinking about that.
What I was thinking of when I wrote this topic was when Death Stranding came out. I was anxious about whether or not it would be good. I wanted to get it day one, but I didn't want to just regret my purchase. And I was feeling mixed because of like some of the writing issues I didn't like about Metal Gear Solid 5.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
when reviews came out for Death Stranding, I saw that there were a lot of critics that, generally speaking, like the critics that I sort of aligned with, either loved it or liked it a lot with some caveats. And people who were playing it, kind of the vibe that I got very early on was that they liked it, or there were a group of people that just hated it. And
Right.
to me, that gave a context for me that, oh, that means the game is trying something, and that might not be for everyone. And that's what I'm looking for in this game. And so that made me feel a lot more reassured that I would like that game. So I feel like because there were like dissenting opinions on it,
Oh,
that to me kind of more adequately rated the game in my mind.
yeah. Okay. That's I agree with you. I'm actually the same way. Like if I see that something, if it's a movie, a game, anything, if I see that something is getting mixed reviews, like just 50-50, people love it, people hate it, it makes me want to engage with it more than if something just had unanimous praise. Now, to answer your question more directly, I don't know that this is something that people consider, honestly. If people see, I think in most cases, what happens is people see something that's divisive, and they just kind of, like, okay. If it's not something they care about, they're not going to engage with it.
Yeah. I guess
unless there's a narrative behind it, sure, but
yeah. So I guess like contrary to this, the opposite is also true, because my brother got me for my birthday a little while back an early copy of No Rest for the Wicked, the game, the sort of isometric action RPG, has some Souls-like elements by the team that did Ori and the Blind Forest, and it's a beautiful game. But when I was kind of checking it out, some of the reviews were quite mixed. They were saying that like the game is gorgeous, the game has a lot of really cool combat that has like weight to it, but also the game has a lot of elements of like crafting and survival and town building that felt like it was at odds with this sort of atmospheric, exploratory, heavy combat. And that mixed review made me very hesitant to try it. And since it's an early access game, in that context, I felt like I was much better off waiting to see what this game would actually become when it had a full release.
Okay. So you would say that like it depends on the kind of feedback or the kind of division that it's creating.
Yeah.
It's not,
because like to me, it could either mean that the game is saying something and that's just not for everyone. Not everyone's going to want a slower, more atmospheric horror game, for example.
Yeah.
But it could also mean that the game is just trying a bunch of things that just don't really work together. So yeah, I guess it makes a context for the game, but that's sort of an agnostic thing to how the game is perceived. Like it's divisive doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad. Like it's more adequately rated. It just means that like you might have a better idea for the context of the game. I don't know. It's interesting.
Okay, yeah. It is, and I this is actually a question I might start asking people, honestly, just because I'm curious to see what other people think. Here and now, I can say that sometimes it does get me to play a game more than a positive review would, but for now, and I guess like if there is enough like drama over a game, and it makes people like it piques people's curiosity, and it creates that like, oh, did you hear about this thing? I actually have a game on here that did this. We can talk about that later. And it just makes people want to try it.
Yeah, I mean,
like, sure.
I played Devotion, the Red Candle games, and I had heard about Detention, but I don't think I would have tried that game had I not heard about the controversy they got themselves in, which has basically nothing to do with the game.
Yeah.
Like the game is like the best iteration of what PT was trying to do I think I've ever played.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the controversy, or like the dissenting opinions kind of like were not relevant to my experience with that as an art form.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, it's sort of like the divisiveness, I think, was just an interesting way of sort of framing like how good and bad reviews sort of pair together. It's not kind of a fully formed thought, but it's definitely like got me thinking about like what actually makes a game sort of rated.
I think a bad review can sink a game despite like the good qualities it has. You can, I think a famous example is Earthbound. That game got critically panned when it came out. No one liked it. Everyone said it was kiddie and simplistic and silly and too, like, it didn't look good. It was ugly, and it was not Final Fantasy, and people didn't like it. And that kind of created an influence that, you know, the marketing for the game wasn't exactly helping or remedying. And it wasn't until years later that people re-examined this game, to go back to your point of reappraisal, your talking point.
Yeah, if anything, that game did better the more people could play that game sort of outside any sort of context.
Oh, yeah.
The more they could just try it out on their own.
And it wasn't just, and it also proves my point where there's a narrative behind it. Like, over time, the story of Earthbound became known to people, and people wanted to be a part of that. And then everyone out of nowhere loved Earthbound, and now it's a critically appraised game, or critically, like, a aptly rated game.
Yeah, no, it's funny too, because like that game came out and like people were like, this game is weird, pejorative, and like I remember being 14 with SNES 9X playing that game, and because it was weird, praise.
Yeah. I mean, to be truth be told, a lot of people hate that "this game stinks" ad.
It's
when I
not
saw
a
that
great
as a kid. I mean, when I saw that as a kid, I thought, "Oh, this is kind of funny. I think this is cool. Maybe I should try this."
Yeah, maybe it had a better handle on the game than people give it credit for. So
even though anyway, yeah, let's not talk about Earthbound. That's gonna be a whole
I think we've been teasing this for long enough, but why don't we?
Let's
why don't we sit down and go? Okay, do you want to do most overrated, underrated? Like, obviously, adequately rated has to be the final one, but you want to do most overrated or most underrated? I'll let you pick.
I want to do underrated first.
Okay.
What, in your opinion, Kyle? Sorry for my chair noises. In your opinion, Kyle, what is your underrated pick?
I was thinking a lot on this, and so is it okay? Can I be a coward and have an honorable mention?
You can do two. I'll let you have one pick and then an honorable mention.
Okay, I'll start with my honorable mention, which is Pyre, only because I think that game is it has its defenders, but like people need to turn off Hades 2 while it's updating. Go play Pyre. Wait for Hades 2 to finish, and then play Hades 2.
True though. Pyre is like super giant sleeper. It is like their hidden gem.
But okay, I have been thinking long and hard on underrated though, and it's gonna sound contrarian to the definitions I gave about sort of enough dissenting opinions making a game adequately rated. But my most underrated game of all time is Fallout New Vegas. I know that sounds like a joke, because like everyone knows that Fallout New Vegas is underrated.
You cook. All right.
However, as the Fallout show has come out, and around the same time, there was a crossover Magic the Gathering set that was themed around different factions and eras of Fallout. And so I've listened to a lot of people talk about the show and talk about these like the Magic crossover, and describe Fallout as someone who loves Fallout to people who might not know what Fallout is. And like you saw like the post that game coming out, like 76 had a spike, and then Fallout 4 by a wide margin like had a huge peak.
Yeah.
And when I was watching like a lot of these deck upgrades for these like Magic themed decks, the thing I saw the most common, I swear to you, was someone going like, yeah, I love Fallout. You know, it's so awesome to see these cards represented in like flavorful mechanics to sort of bring you into the world naturally. You know, Fallout's like some of my favorite games. I played 3, I love 4. And then like a card with a character from from New Vegas would come on screen, and they're like, I don't know that one. I didn't play New Vegas. So it's like
Wow.
even the people who are diehard Fallout fans who love that game, like it's so baffling to me because it would be like someone going like, yeah, Lord of the Rings, love it, man. Backsheesh stuff, incredible. Like the Hobbit films, amazing. I haven't seen the Peter Jackson ones yet, but I heard those are pretty good. That's what it's like to me. So like I feel like you do still have a massive number of people who like have only really engaged with 4 and then a little bit of the other games. And like I think kind of people understand that like 1 and 2 are like the classic ones that started it. But like I don't know, it's despite its popularity and like the fact that there are a non-small number of people being like pretentious busybodies, myself included, like I still think that game is not getting the love it's getting, despite it being teased as a major like factor in like the next season of Fallout.
Well, maybe the show will bring in new players to it. I hope that for your sake.
Mm-hmm. So what about you? What is your most underrated game?
I mean, you want to talk about cowards. These are the 2 most predictable choices, and I even spoiled them during the episode. My honorable mention is Nier Replicant on the PS3 and Xbox 360. I think these games, when they came out, they were... and you know what? I like that you went first because you kind of highlighted a flaw with my argument here, where I think you're right. I think I do depend too much on the critic and reviewer opinions of what an underrated and overrated game is. And it shows here because my choices are Nier and Earthbound. The original Nier was very... oh, did I say the other choice? Fuck! Damn it! Okay. It's fine. Anyway, Nier is like a game when it came out. We said this in the episode. It was not received well critically. It was and to be honest, it is a janky fucking game. It is in no way, shape, or form a polished experience. But despite all of those qualities, there's still so much in the game. Like there's still so much the game wants to say, and there's still like a heart inside that just breaks through all of that, all of the rough edges, and it just kind of becomes part of the game. Like the rough edges become part of the experience. It's almost like endearing that this game is like I don't know how to describe it because it's kind of a misfit, just like the characters are in the game. Like the story is about these characters that don't really belong anywhere, and they're trying to find their place and stuff. And the game kind of represents that too. It's like give it a chance. There's something there's an appearance to it, but it's about what's inside that matters. It's such a good it's such a good metaphor for the players too. Anyway,
and you're right. Like the controls and some of that like are very stiff, and so if you're coming at the game in terms of like this is a third person action beat 'em up game with some RPG elements, it does feel a little clunky if you want it to play like something like a Devil May Cry. But like when you're viewing it through the lens of like this is an atmospheric fantasy game, about misfits, about like understanding things that don't quite make sense, maybe the fact that it is a little stiff doesn't really detract from the experience as much as you might think. Like it's okay if it's a little stiff. Like the game is kind of about that stuff.
And not just that, but like if you think about one of the game's biggest influences, which a lot of people don't talk about this, but like Nier Replicant is a remake of Ocarina of Time. I'm not even joking.
Well, I mean, they have where like Emil's face is just the Majora's Mask moon. Like
not just that, but like the time skip, the dungeon structure, the way right. Like the way the world is designed to like for the city to be like the hub, and like everything outside of it is the actual world, and then the fact that like. And then when you think about that, you think of the controls, and it's like they're just taking cues from Ocarina of Time. They were just trying to make this game, and it with its own unique like shoot 'em up qualities, and bullet hell like platformer stuff, which is great. All these things do matter, and those are just not things that were considered back when the game came out. It was just kind of seen as like, Square Enix, they used to be great, but look at this crowd, they kind of suck now. Mm-hmm. and it wasn't until, like we said, it wasn't until Automata that people felt like going back to Nier and being like, oh, it's good.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry, that took way longer than it should have, because that's just the honorable mention. I'm not gonna bore us with Earthbound talk, because again, I live in a world, this is insane still to me, I live in a world where people think Earthbound is overrated. But no, Earthbound is my pick for underrated game. This game was
there still is that joke of like
out.
Earthbound fan excited to play it for the first time.
And why do you think that is? So the thing with Earthbound is, again, I'm old enough to remember when this game was $20 on a Walmart shelf, the big box. The only version of the game.
I rented it I played it on SNES and NX. I beat it on SNES and NX, but I played it in Blockbuster because it was the weird game with the big box.
Yeah, it was a weird game with a big box. I remember, to this day I regret it. I saw Earthbound for the last time in my life on retail at a Walmart for $25, and I didn't pick it up because I was a dumb kid. I was like, this game sucks, I don't want to play it. So that's just how it was back then. Like, people didn't really care about this game. It wasn't until Smash Bros. 64 came out that people were like, oh yeah, Earthbound. And then Melee was like a love letter to, there was like 2 Earthbound stages. There's 2 tracks from, like, again, which is more fan service than anyone has ever received in years, and it kind of brought back like those fans that have always been supporting Earthbound, and emboldened them, made them stronger. And then to make things even better, like, Earthbound 64 was canceled, but then Mother 3 got announced. They're like, oh shit, this is happening. Like, and it all of these things, this like perfect storm of events created a world where a game that was once hated became beloved. And I don't know, that's why to me it's such a interesting case study for like what an underrated game is. And some, like you said, like what later appraisal did to this game, and then kind of became beloved by a lot of people, including people who've never played it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're looking at the game's like journey through like all eras in which the game has been seen. Yeah, it's absolutely underrated in the sense that like it did come out and like was panned and now has like a more of a beloved following. So yeah, like when you look at the entire game's context, that changes that. But let's move on to overrated. What's your most overrated game?
Oh boy, here we go. I'm starting fights with this one, I guess. But I have my reasons, and I'm gonna be as diplomatic about this as possible. My most overrated game is Tears of the Kingdom.
Really?
The last Zelda game. Yep.
Because I don't think you're stirring anything up, like, for no reason by saying that like that game did not do as many things as Breath of the Wild did.
I guess I will explain my reason as briefly as I can. Number one, yes, this game was just Breath of the Wild Part 2 in the best and worst ways. Number two, I think that I was not a fan. I'm just not a fan of the sandbox style, like playground kind of games. It works for some people. It's not for me. Number three, the story not only kind of retconned Breath of the Wild, but also it's drip fed. It reminded me of Phantom Pain. You remember how like for every cutscene you had to do like 5 hours of gameplay? That's kind of what I felt with Tears of the Kingdom. I did not appreciate the pacing of the story. And finally, I think the biggest problem I have with the game, and this is the thing that I feel a lot of people were not acknowledging in their praise of this game, is that Breath of the Wild is like, people love this game because it's Zelda, not because it's what it is. Because it has all of these qualities that an open world game has that other games before it have had for years, maybe even a decade. Like, I'm basically playing Nintendo's version of Far Cry, and I don't care. Like, that's not enough for me to keep playing this game. Add on top of that the fact that it's like it falls into every trap that these open world games have. The busy work, the check marks, or the checklists on a map, you know, like all of this stuff that's just there. And instead of delivering me a narrative experience, a narrative rich experience, which is why I'm here for Zelda, that and the vibes, which I did not get either, I'm just getting, oh, go fight the 20th Moblin over there, or actually, aren't you tired of fighting these robot guys? There's like 5 of them right there. Do it again. And it's like, eventually, I'm looking at the time and going, I really should just fold my clothes today. I really should just like wash dishes right now. And then suddenly I'm having fun.
I will say, like, the game is like, it's definitely like it is a good game. And it is something that like had a very fond time of, especially like when I was starting it out, and when you like jump out of the first,
oh my god,
when you jump out of the
first
the sky
part is
for the
perfect.
first time,
yeah, when you're
like,
unarmed and you have
up.
to survive from everything, like yeah, that part is excellent. That was excellent.
So, and I think also like I really do love being a part of the conversation with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Like you don't play a lot of the Souls games, but like when those games come out, everyone is trading tips, and you're hearing like, oh, like I got to this boss, but like I used this spell, and you're like, oh, okay, like everyone's sort of like solving this game together, and it's that's what the original Zelda was, is like a game that you had to talk to other people to sort of experience more of.
Yes.
And so I love that aspect of it, but I do agree that like by hour 60, 70, I was like, I want to beat this game so I can just see credits, because I'm kind of tired of playing this game, and I want to see what it has left to say.
So here's the thing about that. For Breath of the Wild, I agree 100%. That game, actually, I did enjoy that game a lot, because when everyone was playing it, that was awesome. It was like, wait, you did what? And you saw what? That's crazy. I didn't like, people will play this game and follow different routes and have different stories to tell. That was awesome. I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom, and for some reason, my experience with that social aspect of it was negative, because every time I'd be like, wait, you found this thing? Where did you find it? And they're like, oh, you didn't know? It was like, it's in blah, blah, blah. It's actually pretty easy to find. You just have to go da, 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 da. And I'm like, why are you talking to me like that? Like, this isn't obvious. There's people who missed the glider because they didn't know they had to, like, do something in the main town to get it before they left. And then instead of people helping you out, they would just come back with this, like, oh, you didn't know? And I'm like, what is this? Like, is this a competition? Like, what I don't know.
See, when I was discussing
I think we
it
had
with,
highly different experiences.
When I was discussing it with coworkers, we had this almost like duel happening where it's like, oh, I found this item. It's I don't want to spoil it for you. It's like, have you seen? And we would like have to describe a wheel with each other, like, or like a spring, to be like, it lets you kind of move up vertically, like, because we didn't want to spoil it for each other, or like, I don't know, take that from each other's experiences. And so yeah, we had to like dance around the fact that that game has a spring in it.
Yeah, see, that was also kind of the problem though, because like we do live in a time where people are, this is kind of the hot take of the night, I guess, but like people are a little too sensitive with spoilers.
Oh,
like,
for sure. I do not care. Like if something,
some spoilers are good. Like especially with a game like Tears of the Kingdom, you should spoil things, because it's like, wait, you saw what? That's crazy. Like if someone told me, yo, I was like walking around the underground and I saw a giant statue, and I'm like, what? How does it fit in there? It's, I don't know. It was huge. That would have made me go like, oh, I gotta go find this thing. Like, I need to see it. That kind of stuff is cool, and I wish I had that experience instead of the like, oh, you're playing the game wrong. You're not playing it right.
Well, and
I think the game right.
I think that something can be said about like, you've played this game before, so there was an expectation, and so you're sort of having to fight that at all times. Like, I don't think anything is going to beat the sensation of cresting a hilltop and seeing a divine beast for the first time. Because I went to in Breath of the Wild. Like, I don't think many games will ever top that moment for me. Of just going like, what is this?
Yeah, what is that? Like, I wanted that so bad for Tears of the Kingdom, but it just didn't give it to me. Whenever I went to the sky, it was like, oh, there's the same gear that turns the catapult and it shoots you there. And I'm like, okay, I saw that 3 times already. Like, the wonder is gone. Whereas Breath of the Wild, the first time I ran into one of those box mazes in the desert, because I was like going up a hill and then the horizon revealed itself and there's just like this maze in the middle of the scenery, and I'm like, holy shit, I need to go there. I need to see what that is. That's insane. Like, that's a really good feeling. But I just feel like Tears of the Kingdom didn't do that for me. It was
I don't think I'm going to be thinking about Tears of the Kingdom for as long as I've thought
No,
about
like
Breath of the
there's
Wild.
just no. I just didn't feel those moments the same way, and especially when there's so much repetitive. Like, do I have to help the sign guy for like 55 times? Is that really necessary? Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
That's my pick. Actually,
So,
I have my. You want to hear my honorable mention for
yeah,
overrated?
do it in a. How fast can you do it?
Pal World. Enough said.
It's
I don't
fine.
even
It's a
have to talk about
$30 game. It's fine.
It came and went. People hyped this shit up for 2 weeks. No one is playing it now. I encourage everyone listening to this, go to the Steam page reviews. It's all shit posts. It's all shit. It's kind of amazing, actually.
Anyways, look, I appreciate its place in history for being the rise of the AA $30 game, but I'm not about to line up and play it. So
No. Come on.
Anyways.
Oh my god. Anyway, yeah.
my most overrated game, I'm jumping around a lot of things, but I think I'm gonna make a called shot here. I think my most overrated game is going to be Rebirth, because I think that game, a lot of people really, really like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I don't think there's a lot of competition right now for Game of the Year as far as like popular, well-polished video games. And
Kyle, that was my third pick. Holy shit.
but like, I know that game is going to do extremely well at like the
know.
Game Awards and get like a
Oh my
lot of games of the
God.
year. And I think
just
it's
gonna-
more because it's the most popular, most polished game.
Yes! And it has the most game in it. It's just the most video game.
But I think
That's it.
I think it's got a lot of bloat, and I think the fact, like that quote that I read about like them responding to speculation on the story from the first game, like that stinks of Westworld and like
my
Game of
God.
Thrones, where I think they just,
Yeah.
it shows me a lack of confidence in their own story, and so that's just a bit of a bummer for me that like. Maybe something incredible could happen with the third game, but I don't know what this game series' legacy is going to be, you know, with Rebirth. And I feel like giving my own definition that like I think a lot of people really love that game, and it's a well-made game. A lot of people worked very
Yeah.
hard on that game. It still plays well, but
There's
like
moments I loved in it. Yeah.
I think enough people sort of like don't have dissenting opinions on it that like I think it does mean something to say like I think that game has a lot of praise right now that I don't think is like I think in years time I don't know if people are going to have a reason to replay that game, or if they haven't played the series I don't know if they're going to want to pick up that game.
No, and it where Remake succeeded, where Remake excelled, which was bring new people into this series. Rebirth, I feel like, falls because it really is Square Enix. Like, we're gonna give you all of this game, and you will not be able to complain about it. Like, if you complain about it, you are an ungrateful lout, a greedy little bastard, and you should love it because all your friends like that's the vibe I got from Rebirth. Even though there are like, if that game was 50 hours shorter, it would have been perfect. No,
Look,
it
I
just
want
had
this to be
blow.
clear. I think that Chadley is a funny little guy.
Oh, I hate Chadley. Stop. Oh my god. Okay. That's. I'm not gonna get.
I just want to make the context clear. Like I'm not going out of my way to hate on this game because it's popular.
No, and I played it all the way through, and I even started hard mode. I'm not gonna lie, just because I wanted to give it a fair chance. I think there are a lot of things that the game does right. I just wish it was that. Like, I wish the game had more focus on what it did well, rather than just be an industry titan. Let's, wiggle our dick around, see how, so everyone sees how big it is, and we get the Game Award nominee. That's it. It really was that. If there is such a thing as an Oscar bait game.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway.
So, okay, our final talking point. Now, what is the most adequately rated video game? What do people have the best grip on, Jorge? What do people just get?
This is kind of something we talk about a lot, but I will. You know what? I'll do my honorable mention, then you do your honorable mention, and then we'll give our final choice.
Okay. Well, I don't have an honorable mention, so I can just think of something really quick off the top of my head.
Okay. How about I'll just talk and give you that moment.
Well, first, okay, can I guess on what our honorable mentions will be?
Go ahead.
Is it
you have
Chrono
one
Trigger?
Guess. It is Chrono Trigger. You guessed it. Holy crap. This is a game that, like, through gnashed teeth, I praise. And I'll explain why. Like, that's the thing. It's a fantastic game. It's like one of the most accessible JRPGs. It came out in the US when it needed to, like, when RPGs needed a hero, Chrono Trigger showed up in the United States. And to this day, like, it's a game I can recommend to people who don't play retro games. Like, you can play Chrono Trigger. It's like accessible to modern
audiences. The soundtrack is like one of the single best. It's got a
fantastic soundtrack
in gaming.
It's got amazing character designs, famously illustrated by Toriyama, directed by Sakaguchi and Yuji Horii of Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest fame. So that was like a big crossover event. A lot of people don't remember that. Like, it was advertised as like, these industry titans have come together to bring us.
What's funny about that is, like, just doing that doesn't necessarily make for a game that's, like, appreciated, because I forgot to bring this up earlier, but, like, Lost Odyssey had similar levels of, like, industry veterans on it, but people just skipped over that game because it just didn't hit right. But, like, for Chrono Trigger, it did.
Yeah, even Blue Dragon, which brought back Toriyama as well, and was also Mistwalker.
Yeah, so it's not just
didn't have the same kind of splash.
It's not just the names on it, but yeah, I feel like most people would agree. Like, yeah, no, that's just one of the better RPGs. End sentence.
Yeah. So when I get a little frustrated with it, because, like, it's what frustrates me about it is that it's something. It's the only RPG people ever want to talk about. I'm like, okay, I can tell you haven't played a JRPG since Chrono Trigger came out. Pardon me. There have been a lot, and I wish you'd play it. But again, I can't fault them for loving this. Like, it's worthy of its praise.
How dare you love one of the better games?
I know, it's like, what am I gonna, like, I'm gonna tut you and be like, how dare you love this game that I also love and I think is amazing and inspired me as an artist? How dare you?
Yeah. Here's my hottest take about Chrono Trigger. Sometimes I will read that passage in the end of the game when you're talking to the developers. And there's that one character that says, I lost 25 pounds while playing this game, so you better appreciate it. God. I read that and I'm like, man, kind of wish this game didn't come out so that, like, that guy didn't have to, like, if I could make the choice that, like, if people had to suffer for this game, I'd say no, don't, like, take out Chrono Trigger. I don't want people to have to hurt.
And going back to Rebirth, that's the vibe I get from it too. Like, a game in this scale, made in this amount of time, it is have, like, a human cost.
We are at a point where, like, this is just not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
This game comes at a cost, and I don't know if that's worth it.
Yeah.
So, all right, what's your most adequately rated game? Now
okay. I'll give you more time.
Because I know what my most adequately rated game is. Like, I think we both agree our honorable mention is Chrono Trigger. But,
okay, we'll just say that that's.
I'll give you one real fast. Doom. Everyone knows Doom's real good.
Well,
let's move on.
As a matter of fact, let me tell you about my most adequately rated game, Doom 2016.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's a good game.
And this is one that I can't even hate it. I don't, you know how sometimes, like, I have to praise Donkey Kong Country 2. I have to, it's amazing. We know it's good. I wish we talk about something else. If someone wants to talk to me about Doom 2016, I will sit down with them for the entire night. I'll be like, this game was a religious experience for me. I have never played something that hit every single one of my buttons. It's just phenomenal. It's the kind of shooter that I've always loved, that I feel died to the cover shooter, and it came back, and I don't know, just everything about it, the story, the music, the pacing, the stage design, the monsters, the demons, the main character, the robot man, the Jonathan Doomslayer.
No, but, like, I think because when you're looking at games a lot as, like, their story, not like the literal, like, plot of the game, but, like, the story of the content of the game coming out. And that kind of proved that no, people do want a more, like, they want their first person shooters to be more like Doom clones. Like, that was something that was missing and lacking, and I feel like we wouldn't have this boom of boomer shooters without 2016 coming out. Like, yeah, it changed the format of like what we view as like what people want in a first-person shooter.
I remember playing the game, and I knew I loved it when I was like, I hate reloading. This is why I can never get into shooters. And when my bullets ran out, I'm like, oh, there is no reloading. I have to find more. This is great. I can shoot as long as I want. As long as I have bullets, I can fire. I was like, this is what I wanted. Oh my God. This is so good. Anyway.
I'm going to say this out loud to put a pin in this so I can just remind you later, but you should check out Frog Monster. It's pretty good.
Frog Monster. Got it. Yeah. Yes.
It's Doom. It's Doom, but you can explore. It's an explore 'em up Doom.
Explore 'em up. All right.
Yeah.
But listen, Doom, see, it's not just that. Doom's got, I don't know, just got those cool demons.
I just did the thing that I said I would stop doing, which is just this meets that.
We talked about this last episode. Yes.
I'll get into it in more detail, but it's a good little game, and it needs more support. It is, if you might say, underrated.
Speaking of good little games, Kyle, what is your pick for most appropriately rated?
Yeah.
Unquestionably good.
And that's the funny thing. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be good. If most people think it's bad, then... but I guess maybe that's not as interesting.
It has to be... anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Go on. But no, my pick for the most adequately rated video game is the original Katamari Damacy.
Wow. That is... That actually is a little contentious because a lot of people like the second one.
So that's kind of where I'm getting at. Is like the original game. Okay. It came out. I don't think that game was more than $20. Like, it was not an expensive game.
Really?
I think it was at least lower than $50. I'm fairly.
I know I picked it up for $5 new. So
yeah. So it was not like a like 50 or 60 retail game. So I think that helped curtail people's expectations of it. A lot of the games media surrounding it at the time sort of pinned the game as like a weird little kooky game. So kind of people got the vibe of it, but as much as people like to sort of be willfully ignorant of what the games are trying to say, I think most people, if you ask them like, what's this game about besides being weird, they're like, oh, it's like kind of about like picking up stuff and like, man, like I think they can kind of suss out that it's trying to say at least a little something about how much clutter we have in our lives. I don't think it's the most, beautifully poetic way to say that, but it's also a game that's in love with a sensation of play. And that's okay that it's not necessarily trying to be like this deeply emotional experience. Maybe not to everyone, man. To me maybe, but
that's exactly what I love about it. It can be a profound experience for you, but it's not trying to tell you anything deeper than just have fun with this.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
It's a beautifully playful experience, and I think that like the narrative of it being weird, like did not hinder like how people viewed that game. I think people like agreed that like, oh, sometimes the controls can be a little janky, but it's a silly little game, and so that didn't really take away from it. It's not a serious action game like when you're trying to play the original Nier and you get frustrated that you can't do combos like DMC. It's a game where I'm rolling up like a cat with a little ball. So I think that sort of made people more acceptable to like, sometimes the camera's a little janky, but I guess everyone just kind of got the like, it's a cute little game. If you talk to diehard Katamari fans, I'd say that most of them would say it's not necessarily their favorite one. And I think the series as a whole, like it's wonderful, it's amazing, but I think the more games in the series they do, the more I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like, I think we're just okay with what we have.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, just that original, like, I don't know, people just got it.
That's a good pick, and I like your analysis of it. I think not every game has to be this deep, like, meaningful, deconstructive experience. It can just be a fucking game.
And like, don't get me wrong, like, it is a beautiful game that has like these deep things to say, but I think the sense of whimsy is never lost in that, and I think that's kind of the most important thing that the game has to say. Is like all of the director's name escapes me right now, but like all of his works are about play and sort of like experiencing like the feel of these games.
I think that you got it right. Also, I will confirm this was a $20 game when it came out.
All right, okay, see, I was right.
I just looked it up.
So
And the director is Keita Takahashi.
He had an exhibit in Savannah once that was incredible.
Oh, no kidding! That's awesome. Shit.
I'll again, it's nothing I'll have to tell you about sometime, but well, Jorge, now it's time for us to wrap things up with our closing thoughts, where we take a moment to summarize what we've discussed and what we want to take away from this topic. So, Jorge, I guess how are you feeling about rating games after this discussion?
I think what I liked about this discussion was more hearing your point of view on how you determine whether a game did not get the love it deserved or that it gets too much of the love that it doesn't deserve. And I appreciate that there was a subjective disclosure at the beginning, just basically saying, this is how we see it. And I appreciate that because I was able to enrich my point of view thanks to that. I think that we don't really need, which is something I actually criticize myself, we don't really need critics to tell us if a game is good or not, and conversely, we don't need critics to tell us if a game is bad either. So I think that was my takeaway from this discussion, is that I kind of have to let go of that deference to authority when deciding whether a game is beloved or not. Yeah,
and I think what I appreciate about the things that you were saying was that you looked at games and sort of how they're seen as sort of this ever evolving thing. It's the entirety of a game's life that dictates sort of the story that's being told about it and what people remember and take away from it. Yeah. There's with fighting games, these games are never really solved. There's never a closing statement we can have. Maybe when we're enveloped by a giant trash island in the middle of the ocean, we'll have different things to say about Katamari Damacy. But for now, I have the sentiment of a very innocent game about rolling stuff up into a beautiful star, and I'm excited to see how I feel, in 1 year's, 5 years, 10 years time about that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think the test of time is truly what I think is the most consistent way of determining what the merits of a game is. I think it's the most consistent and reliable measure we have. Is time has passed, what do people think of this now? And I think that's a much better metric.
Yeah. Actually, hold on. Did you hear that?
Did I hear what?
Oh no, Jorge, we have entered into the question zone.
Welcome to the question zone. Get ready.
Yes, we've solicited a number of questions. You can contact us at brainlordspod@gmail.com. Our first inquiry, Jorge, is from?
This is a question from the sphere of all fears. How important is mimetic status to a game? I hope that question makes sense.
Yeah, no,
it did to me.
I mean, if you're Portal 1 and Portal 2, it's extremely unimportant and extremely important.
Yeah, right. It's both the least important thing about a game and also the most important. It's kind of crazy.
It is such a double-edged sword, because we talk about we brought up Castlevania 2 and stuff like sequelitis, and that's gonna stick with a lot of people, but that may be contradictory to when you're actually critically evaluating this game. So but then at the same time, the things I was joking about with Katamari are things that we're joking about day one. So yeah, I think it's an important thing in the story of these games, but yeah, it can be a bit of a detractor. I hate to just be well, it's one of this thing and one of this other thing, but yeah, I think memes can sometimes make or break a game, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was thinking. There's a lot of... There's the frustrating part about games becoming memes is that you have this hope, especially when it's a game that deserves more recognition. You have this hope that this is going to elevate the medium to people who just would not have experienced this otherwise. And yet it doesn't. In my opinion, it just consistently doesn't. So I lean more toward doesn't matter, actually.
Yeah. But at the same time, how many people played Nier Automata because they saw the text box? You're thinking you want a dash 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 to be, aren't you? When they knew it as the game with the robot with the nice butt. How many people like genuinely tried that game?
I would give you a better example. I think Majora's Mask is a game that has been elevated by mimetic status more than the game itself, in my opinion.
I know you were saying I need to retry that or replay that game. Yeah. I like that game. This is a topic we can get in another point, but like I can see.
Yeah. But because a lot of the like the Ben Drown memes, like the creepypasta,
oh yeah, you're right.
A lot of that stuff started because of Majora's Mask, and the curious thing to me as someone who played the game when it came out was like this is another game that everybody hated when it came out. They hated the time system. They hated the fact that you didn't know what the hell you were doing. They hated the fact that you played as young Link and never as adult Link. Like all of these things kind of turned people off. But as time went on, people kind of started praising Majora's Mask for things like, well, the story's really good. Yeah. The atmosphere, the ambiance, the vibes of the game are perfect.
I was listening to someone...
that alone is enough to carry it.
I was listening to someone discuss, like, for a lot of younger people, Majora's Mask was one of the first games they played that was, like, about something that wasn't immediately obvious. And so I think that, like, I love the game and like, the atmosphere that it's trying to cultivate, but I can definitely see it as, like, you know, if you haven't played or experienced a lot of art that's, like, very challenging, you know, it might encourage you to do, like, these... this writing, like the Ben Drown and all this creepypasta stuff, because like the game, there's so much more to it than it's really like letting on, which is the text.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's I think that's a good subject for another.
Yeah,
episode.
definitely.
I feel like I have a lot to say about Majora's Mask and its place in the video game zeitgeist right now.
Mm-hmm. So our second question is from Kef Geely. They say. What could the Game Awards do to be taken more seriously? Parentheses, be realistic.
I mean, I got a kind of a cheap shot answer to that. Take the money out. Take the money out.
Okay, be realistic is carrying a lot of weight there. Let's.
I guess like
let's assume like maybe Jeff Keighley is like, you know, sitting in his dressing room and thinking like, man, I got to get the gamers on my side. Maybe I can take a little bit less money here. But like,
Kyle, is Jeff Keighley in the room right now?
He's behind me. He has a loaded pistol pointed at my back.
Oh my god. Anyway,
but no, like, yeah. So like, what could they do that wouldn't cause them to lose all of their money?
I'll give you a good faith answer. I think number one. And this is just based on the last show. Number one, the hyper focus on celebrities is it just communicates an entirely incorrect message. It is very easy to misinterpret putting like famous faces behind games as opposed to like the actual creators of these games as like disingenuine and insincere. Like a lot of people see that and they're like, that's not me, that's a celebrity. Like, you know, the point of elevating game devs is that one day you could be like, this is something you could aspire to, this is something that's achievable that you could do.
I do wish that they would do more lifetime achievement awards and, you know, take time to give like awards to minority groups and people that have been overlooked in gaming. Because like yeah. If not here, then where?
Yeah, and the thing with that is those usually end up being the dry parts of the show because they never want to punch them up. They end up there's this tonal shift, this tonal whiplash where suddenly we're serious, suddenly we're paying respect, suddenly we're paying tribute and having the correct reverence toward this medium. And then bam, they cut to like another jokey commercial and then suddenly it's gone. Like that, all of that is gone. You know what I mean? Like,
and to be fair, I am 100% okay with the Muppets being there.
Sure, that's like that was the highlight of last year. Like I felt myself like coming back to life when the little meat guy showed up. I was like, whoa, it's that thing. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
no, I think that because I learned not terribly long ago that like the way that the awards are taken, there is some like popularity does contribute into like how games are sort of rated, but largely, it is a committee of different journalists representing a large number of groups, organizations, media outlets, and things like that. But what ends up happening is it's a journalist choice award, which like I do think like it is fine. Like these are people who are like whose jobs it is to evaluate games. But what can happen out of that is that if you have something like say the New York Times, they have different writers and contractors and people they can consult on these games. But on the category of best fighting game, maybe they had someone that just wrote a story about SF6 and can say like no, like that Street Fighter is really good this year. It's better than a lot of the entries, but they don't necessarily.
But it is the mainstream pick. It's like the only fighting game most people will play.
If you don't know, like, or have a deep, intimate knowledge of this topic, like, you can very easily not like. I remember like there was a year that there were like the best soundtracks coming out, and I was like, man, none of these people have listened to Paper Mario Origami King because the way it like weaves in and out is just incredible. It's like only video games can do this kind of soundtrack. And but like if you're not like deep deep in the paint with like video game music, like you wouldn't think of that because you would go to the more orchestrated stuff, like the higher produced, bigger budget stuff. So
but even then I'm pretty sure what won best music last year. Hold up,
well, you look that up. Yeah, so I think what I'm getting at is that like I think they should go to more of a committee. I don't think that like I think that like some of the voting with like industry vets and journalistic groups, like they should definitely count for something. But I think that ultimately, like they should have someone whose like whole deal is RPGs, like have the majority of the influence. 51% of the vote.
Not just the Final Fantasy 16s, which is what ended up winning best music, by the way. And I bring this up because even on the nominees, there it was, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which had a incredible soundtrack, and it lost to Final Fantasy 16 because of the name. It had nothing to do with
there was the other year Octopath Traveler 2 lost, and like that game soundtrack is I think actually no, Octopath Traveler 2 got nominated for best RPG. I don't even think it was on best soundtrack, and like that is
I can look up the last year. Let me see.
It's an absurdly good soundtrack. So I think I would love to see more time and reverence spent for actual people like in the industry, and I wish that they would have a small committee of people who specialize in the topics to vote solely on those topics.
Yeah, and that way we don't have that saturation of like the obvious choices, which is again another thing that I feel kind of takes away from the honesty of the award show, which I'm sure is like people behind the curtain are honest people. They're trying to do this thing in good faith, but the issue becomes that we're just kind of putting a spotlight on games that already have that spotlight. Like there's no it's just there to validate the people who love like that game. And
ugly games really like Cruelty Squad are never going to win awards even though like they're genuinely pushing like what games can be.
Right, like there's games that are more deserving. I don't want to get like objective here because I know people like have their opinion, and if you like God of War, that's fine. But like,
it is a well-made game.
and to be clear, last year Baldur's Gate won best game, and I think they deserve that. I really do think they deserve that.
Yeah, I think that's maybe why I feel so passionate about the Game Awards, despite knowing like what am I doing here? It's because like sometimes your favorite does win, and sometimes it's like, you know what? No, like we got this one, and it feels really good. Yeah. It's like, you know what? This can be kind of cool. Like it has enough hits every year to where you're like, you know what? Maybe there is something here. Maybe this is worth it.
I think that to give my definitive answer, it's instead of highlighting like games as products, highlighting them as craft is the right direction to go. I know they do that sometimes. The reason I felt Baldur's Gate deserved the win last year is because the staff came up and they're like, it took us 6 years to make this game, which is crazy now. It's crazy to even think about that now, that a game took 6 years to make. And the staff was up there proud, in tears, after everything they've gone through, and they got the recognition for it. I think that's important. And it doesn't highlight Baldur's Gate as a product. It highlights it as a craft, as a thing people had to sit down and sweat and cry and bleed for. And it deserves validation,
No, absolutely, and that's what I said. Like, I feel like it could get to a more respectable place. It's ultimately going to be about like ads, and that's just what
Get rid of the ads. Get rid of
it's
the
not
skits.
gonna happen.
Like,
sorry.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Anyway, Jeff Keighley, please let Kyle go. He's a good boy. He won't talk shit anymore.
Well, I think Jeff says he wants us to take a trip to the Rec Room, where we recommend something inside and outside the world of gaming that might complement our panel. So, Jorge, do you have any recommendations from inside and outside the world of games?
Oh, how about you start? Because I have to think about this one for a little bit.
So for something related to video games, there's actually a book I bought a little while ago. I believe it's called The Greatest Game of All Time. And it's a collection of, from one person's perspective, it's every year, they select sort of the best game of the year. And they have different sort of authors sort of contributing different write-ups, but like it's about like looking at like in 1990, why is it that Monkey Island deserves to be game of the year?
Oh,
I know I didn't get that title right, and I need to credit that properly.
Yeah, look it up.
Here we go. The full title and author of this book is Video Game of the Year, a year-by-year guide to the best, boldest, and most bizarre games from every year since 1977 by Jordan Miner. It's a
all right.
Wonderful little book. Yeah, and it's got all these write-ups on it's both about like games that highlighted their year, but also making a list of games that like exist as a list. Games like there's a racing game to complement the fact that like racing games push the graphics, and I'm highlighting this year to show that. So that's my pick for something in the world of games. Outside the world of games, I actually would recommend. I just saw a documentary the other night called Sisters with Transistors. It's about the early movement of synth music and instruments.
Ooh.
And the women that helped pioneer them.
So they got Wendy Carlos in there, huh?
Yes, asterisk.
I hope so, because I love her stuff.
Yeah, so
and she was like the grandmother of synth music.
Absolutely. No, they very much do. It's about sort of like, the women are sort of fighting to be taken seriously as women in a field, and also like, synth music at the time, especially, there are women they have sound bites from that are playing the theremin in the 30s and trying to like get
in the 30s
get taken seriously, that like, no, this is harder to play than a concert violin. So
so this goes way back.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right, that's awesome. Okay.
So it is
Now
about people sort of trying to get their genre adequately rated.
I do get that validation.
Yeah, I stammered there with Wendy Carlos because unfortunately she is extremely private and extremely litigious with how her things are shown, and so because of that, she has a title card the same weight as all the other women, but she didn't want to be in the documentary. She refused to be. So
well, that makes sense, because at the time I think she was transitioning, and that was like a time where it was like really difficult to do that. And
and she's one of the few people that are still alive in that documentary.
Yes.
And like I said, she's just a private person. Unfortunately, it does mean that the only clip they have of her is sort of that time period, and they're always referring to her as Wendy Carlos, as a woman, and but like in the documentary she's brought up as doing Switched on Bach, and unfortunately because the only segment they have on her is basically just like a couple of women in the scene going like, yeah, it was really cool, it sold better than the Beatles, but it kind of just made people think that all synth was covers of other music. So like, and it's unfortunate. I wish she could have like been a bigger part in that documentary to like, I don't just be an icon for like trans women everywhere, but like, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's still an excellent documentary.
I'll check it out, because I'm definitely interested in like because even at that time when like Wendy Carlos was doing soundtracks for Stanley Kubrick, even at that time that synth was already kind of becoming more common, especially in scores. I would recommend like I'll send you some videos of like some old synth from like London that they used to use in like BBC shows and stuff. That stuff is really good. It's
Oh yeah, no, they covered the one of the biggest like cultural breakpoints for synth music was the Doctor Who theme.
Yes. Okay. So, oh my god, and I don't even watch Doctor Who, but I love.
No, it's a good theme.
So much,
that theme
track.
rules.
Yeah.
But yeah, what would you like to recommend?
Okay,
inside and
so
outside
like
the
a
world
game, inside world. So when we recommend inside the world of gaming, can it be games or does it have to be like a supplementary material?
Look, like I want this to just have us. I want us to have a chance to like recommend just games that might fit this, or like talk about cool indie games or cool retro games. But at the same time, we need to like touch grass and not have everything in our lives be about video games. So
so I will say, I do recommend that people go look Nintendo's E3 2005 press conference. It was it's a piece of history. I was watching it and being like, this they kept saying, like, hearing, like, seeing Iwata and Reggie going like, we want people who don't play games to play games. Like, it resonates now because they did it. They accomplished exactly that. The Wii became one of the best-selling consoles ahead of the... Actually, I'm trying to remember if the Wii outsold the PS2. Because at the time, the PS2 was like the titan of console gaming.
It has not, because I want to say the Switch is trying to outsell the PS2 right now by releasing
PS2,
more editions.
But the Wii got up there, man. Let's see. Console sales. Yeah, all right. List of best-selling consoles. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I need. Wow. Actually, the DS outsold the Wii. That's actually amazing.
I guess it's such an accessible little device, yeah.
Yeah, the Wii ended up selling like 100 million units, and they accomplished exactly what they meant to do, which was get grandma to play a video game. And, and that's why it sold so well. And it's really cool to see that, like...
Yeah, before it was like a known product.
Yeah, before it was a fact. Like, everyone going like, Wii, what the hell is this crap?
Everyone made fun of it, but you know what? Like, we would like to play.
Yeah, and then that was even before it was called the Wii. It was called the Revolution in 2005. And they still have that, like, really, they have that very, like, quickly put together logo with, like, a little CD and the O. It's very quirky, but I love it because I'm looking back. And man, when Iwata was like, we actually plan on making this the most backwards compatible console, if you could call it a virtual console, and I was like, oh shit, he said that's the thing, that's the Wii, oh my god. And then like it's just really cool to have that perspective. You do kind of start chuckling a little bit when that mid 2000s gaming humor kicks in, and then the cringe sets, and you're like, this was a very, you kind of remember this was kind of an exclusive niche back then, even though Nintendo was trying to be more welcoming and more inclusive.
No, but everyone was trying to be a tough guy.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's important context, though. I like looking back at these things and seeing how far we've come, because it's important to have perspective like that when commenting on today's gaming ambient and environment. Yeah. And as for not game related things, I watched The Green Knight the other day.
I really need to see that movie. I have not yet.
And it was one of those movies, I watched it the first time and I was actually getting angry at it, being like, rolling my eyes like, oh my god, it's so like artsy-fartsy. And then it ended and I just was quiet the entire time through the credits. And I look at Margaret, I'm like, I'm not prepared to talk about this yet. And I woke up thinking about it the next day. I was like, that movie, like, there's just scenes that stayed with me. Even though I was like curmudgeon-y, trying to find reasons to hate it, at the end of the day, that there's a scene at the end that could have been, it was just so refreshing. It could have been like this high stakes, epic Act 3 bullshit, but it toned things down so perfectly that when it hit the climax, I was like, wow, I get it. That's what you're trying to tell me. Thank you. This is a great movie.
my friend George swears that the best way to watch that film is to have it playing and have like a version of the Arthurian poem that you read alongside it to see how it matches up.
I will 100% agree with your friend. I had to Wikipedia a lot of Arthurian lore because I did not know what the fuck was happening.
Oh my
God,
you're on the wiki looking up the lore.
Yes, and I had to pause it because I don't like. Oh my God, let me tell you. When I was watching Deadpool and Wolverine, I went to the theater, and there was this guy in front of me who kept pulling out his phone to look up every reference, and I'm like, you're part of the problem. You're the reason no one wants to go to the fucking theater anymore. Anyway, I didn't want to do that. I would pause the movie, like if Margot went to take a bathroom break, or if I went to like microwave something, I would like go to Arthurian lore and be like, okay, who is this character? I saw this person's obviously important. And one thing I kind of hate but love at the same time about this movie is that they'll show you a character, but they will never name drop them. So it's like, if you know, then you know. And I love that about it. It's because, again, I'm so used to movies just spelling shit out for me. Like, it was just kind of refreshing to watch a thing like this, where it's like, it just kind of, it doesn't want to bother you with this like trivia, you know. It just wants to tell the story, and it does. It's pretty good. I recommend it.
All right, well, I'll give it a watch, and then I'll hop on Fextra Live to look up the Well, this has been Brainlords. You can find us on Twitter at BrainlordsPod. You can find me on social media as Cute Monster Props, or at my website, cutemonsterprops.com. Jorge, where can they find you?
You can find me in my bed, asleep. No, I'm kidding. I'm J-Man Velez. That's J-Man, Velez, at everything social media.
Yes, and questions, comments, and inquiries can go to brainlordspod@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube and all over places where podcasts are born. And
where are podcasts born?
I looked it up. It's too. Yeah, that's why you have to find a host in order to. No, and I'm staggering.
Well, when mommy and daddy podcasts love each other very much.
Mm-hmm. I had to look up our outro. It was okay because this will all sound better in editing. You can find us on YouTube and all other places where podcasts are born. We have been your Brainlords for today. Now, go prove the justice of your culture and go and rest, our heroes.
Thank you for adding that in. Thank you.
We need a send off. We have to.
No, I love it.
If another better one comes up, we can use it. But for right now, congratulations.
No, I love it. Go and prove the justice of our culture. Now rest, our heroes.
Ronaldinho, success!